How is a decade gone?
One was abduction.
A strange vehicle pulled up, April got in, and disappeared from the world as if she had been swallowed by the darkness. The entire United Kingdom launched into a desperate search, but the truth behind the door of Mark Bridger's home would leave everyone even more shaken.
Welcome back to Crime Delvi. My name is Luca. Today, we're going to unravel a case file that left the entire United Kingdom holding its breath. The disappearance of little April Jones. And before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications as we work together to raise awareness about education, ethics, and our responsibility to protect children and other vulnerable people around us. And let me know which city you're watching from in the comments below.
April Jones was a little girl from Wales. April was born on the 4th of April 2007 in Machynlleth, Powys. April was the daughter of Coral and Paul Jones. April was remembered by her family and community as a cheerful, energetic child, even though she had faced health challenges from a very young age. April was born 7 weeks premature and was diagnosed with a mild form of cerebral palsy, which affected her hip and left leg. She needed to take medication every day and often had pain in her leg. Her family described April as a little fighter, always laughing, always affectionate, and very active. Even though her leg hurt, she kept trying hard to ride a bike from the time she was 3.5 years old so she could get around and play with her friends. On the evening of the 1st of October 2012, April attended a swimming class at a local leisure center. Meanwhile, her parents were at school attending a parent-teacher meeting. After swimming, April invited a friend over to her house to play. The two children were allowed to go outside, but only for a short time. Her mother had made it very clear, don't stay out too long. 15 minutes later, April was still playing with friends in the Brynigog neighborhood of Machynlleth, a quiet area where everyone believed children could safely play outside. At 7:29 p.m., April's mother started looking for her daughter, but she couldn't find her, and she immediately called 999 to report her daughter missing.
Hi, this emergency.
My dog's been kidnapped. I live in the dog. Hang on, Sal, can you speak to them, please? Hello.
And what makes you think the daughter's been kidnapped?
Apparently, she's gone off in a car with somebody. Somebody picked her up in a car or something.
Okay, what's the name of the child that's gone missing?
April Jones.
April, how old is she?
5.
Dyfed Powys police responded almost immediately. The first officer to arrive at the scene began gathering information, including who had last seen April. A 7-year-old girl. The friend who was with April at the time. The girl described a man with brown hair, a beard, blue or green eyes, wearing a green jacket, jeans, and sneakers. And she also described a gray or silver van-type vehicle. But the detail that really caught investigators' attention was the vehicle itself. April did not get in through the passenger side. She climbed in from the driver's side. In the context of the United Kingdom, that meant only one thing. The vehicle had a left-hand drive. That day, before everything happened, there were no warning signs at all. April's sister later said it was just a normal day. April went to swimming class like she always did, then left the changing room in a happy mood to go home. Even though it was already October, the weather was still warm and it was still light outside. It was the kind of evening any family would think was safe for young children to go out and play. But around 7:30 p.m., everything changed. April's sister received a call from her mother. On the other end of the line, there was panic, and she was just screaming that April had disappeared. From that moment on, worry quickly spread into panic. News began to move through the community, first by word of mouth, then quickly exploding across social media, triggering an almost immediate response. people left their homes, joined the search, and helped in every way they could. A small town instantly shifted into emergency mode. April's mother was panicking, desperately searching for her daughter. As the search operation continued to expand, the media began to get involved, reporting on a 5-year-old girl believed to have been abducted. And within just a few hours, the case had drawn nationwide attention, turning a small community in Wales into the center of public focus. By 10:30 p.m., police issued an official statement, confirming that concern was growing and urging anyone with relevant information to come forward immediately. Alongside the efforts to trace April's movements, police also prioritized supporting her devastated family. They also released the last known description of what April was wearing, a purple coat and a school uniform polo shirt, an important detail in identifying her final sightings. Trash collection in the area was suspended, and workers were sent to help with the search, showing just how urgent the situation had become. The number of people involved grew by the hour, quickly rising to more than 100 local residents. And within a short time, the small town of just over 2,000 people was covered with volunteer search groups. Some people even traveled from South Wales and northern England to help, turning the search into a large-scale operation that stretched far beyond the local area. Police had to reorganize the effort, divide the search zones, and control the operation to make sure volunteer teams were deployed systematically without overlapping or missing areas. From the very beginning, search teams faced one major obstacle: the terrain. The surrounding area was wide-open countryside, mixed with mountains, ravines, streams, and waterfalls, with uneven ground that made movement and searching slow and complicated. On top of that, the slate quarries in the area created many hidden spots and hard-to-reach spaces, significantly increasing the workload. In total, more than 23 square miles were searched, with more than 300 specific search points identified and checked. Police knew very clearly that if this was an abduction by a stranger, every minute that passed reduced the chance of finding April safe. About 120 officers were deployed, working continuously without interruption. By the next morning, with no result, a major decision was made. The National Child Rescue Alert System was activated. The alert was sent to every police force across the United Kingdom, asking them to watch for any person or vehicle matching the description that had been provided, including April's description, the suspect's description, and the vehicle seen by the witness. At the same time, people in Machynlleth continued joining the search in large numbers, working through the night and into the next day, helping professional teams search the area. But despite the scale and intensity of the operation, 14 hours after April was last seen, there was still no concrete trace of her.
April!
Within minutes of April's disappearance,
Okay, people, let's go forward.
the people of Machynlleth had turned out in their hundreds to help in the search.
Right.
Alongside professional volunteers, they carried on through the night.
There's a large number of people here this morning, and we are very grateful indeed for all of your help and assistance.
And into the following day.
Missing person posters were put up across the area, while police set up roadblocks to check vehicles going in and out of the town. As the investigation escalated, media pressure grew quickly, forcing police to hold press briefings every few hours to provide updates. Command of the suspect search was given to Detective Superintendent Andy John, who was responsible for coordinating the entire direction of the investigation. On the morning of October 2, as information continued to be gathered and cross-checked, the investigation began to narrow. Several independent sources pointed to the same person, a local man. His name was Mark Bridger. He was not on the police's usual radar, but he had been in the area at the exact time the abduction was believed to have happened, with a vehicle that matched the witness description. The detail that immediately drew police attention was Mark Bridger's vehicle, a left-hand drive vehicle that fully matched the witness description. At the same time, information emerged suggesting that Bridger had even joined the search for April, behavior that forced investigators to reassess his entire role in the case. Police identified 4 possible locations where Bridger might be, and tactical teams were coordinated to check those addresses at the same time. About 20 hours after the disappearance was reported, officers carried out simultaneous raids on the identified locations. There was no trace of April. There was no trace of Bridger. When they approached a rural house called Mount Pleasant at 3:03 p.m., the area was completely quiet, with no vehicle parked outside. An investigator went inside and called out April's name. There was no response. There was no sign that she had been there at that time. According to records, Bridger had only moved to the property about 5 weeks earlier, a detail that made it harder to establish his recent activities. But just over an hour later, at 4:30 p.m., Mark Bridger was arrested. Mark Bridger was spotted at 10:42 a.m., walking his dog along the side of the road a few miles from where April lived after a police helicopter located him from above. Before that, he had tried to change his appearance by cutting his hair and shaving his beard, an action that suggested an attempt to avoid being recognized. About 30 minutes after he was spotted from the air, a patrol car approached and stopped him on the road. When an officer asked him to confirm his identity, Bridger stopped, turned around, and answered, "I know what all this is about." When police asked, "Where is the girl?" Bridger replied, "It was an accident. I hit her with my car. I don't know where she is. I was looking for her all last night and all day today on foot because my car is in the garage. It is a left-hand drive Land Rover Discovery. I did not abduct her. I did everything I could to resuscitate her. I panicked. I did not know who she was until this morning when I saw it on TV. I just wish I knew what I had done with her, where I had left her. I want to say sorry to the family. There was no life in her, no response, no breathing, her eyes were not reacting. She was just lying there on the seat. I tried to resuscitate her. I would not throw her away. She is a human being." After his arrest, Mark Bridger was taken to Aberystwyth Police Station, where normal station operations for other cases were temporarily limited, so all resources could be focused on this investigation. Police specifically asked anyone who had seen the Land Rover Discovery or Mark Bridger between Monday evening and Tuesday afternoon to contact them immediately. At the same time, while questioning continued, the search operation remained intense, with about 40 specialist officers, police dogs, and mountain rescue teams working through the night. However, no concrete results were reported. Meanwhile, April's mother, Coral, appeared alongside Detective Superintendent Reg Bevan and made a public appeal, asking anyone with relevant information to come forward.
There must be someone out there who knows where she is and can help the police find her. We are desperate for any news. April is only 5 years old. Please, please, help find her.
In relation to this specific investigation, as I said earlier, we're pursuing a number of lines of inquiry, and Mark Bridger is one of them. And in relation to the images that I circulated to you earlier today, which was the Land Rover Discovery and Mark Bridger's photograph, can I again ask, did you see this vehicle between Monday evening and Tuesday afternoon? And do you know Mark Bridger, and did you see him during that period, Monday evening and Tuesday afternoon? And if you have any information, please contact us on the Child Rescue Alert Line.
Police later confirmed that this was one of the most complex search operations ever carried out in the United Kingdom, both in scale and terrain. Multiple units from nearby areas, along with specialist teams, were deployed, focusing on more than 20 key locations. In total, the operation generated about 600 tips from the public, and each piece of information was collected and checked as part of the tracing process. The search operation continued to expand, with about 100 mountain rescue volunteers, 100 specialist search officers, the Coast Guard, and the RNLI joining the effort to search different areas. But while the search continued out in the field, inside the interview room, things began to shift. Mark Bridger gave his initial testimony. 65. He said that April had died and described the incident as a traffic accident, claiming that his car had collided with April while she was riding her bicycle. He said he panicked and put April in his car after the incident. After that, he drove away and then said he could not clearly remember what happened next. He blamed alcohol, he said his memory had gaps, and he could not tell police where April was. But there was one detail we could not ignore. He said that he had left April in a place he called safe. If this really was an accident, why not call emergency services right there at the scene? Why take a child away from where it happened? And why could he not remember what he did afterward, but still insist she was safe? And maybe at that point, investigators also began to suspect that this story did not reflect the truth. At the same time, they searched Bridger's home. As soon as they stepped inside, one thing immediately stood out: the overpowering smell of cleaning products in the enclosed space, along with an unusually high temperature inside the house, suggesting there had recently been a fire in the living room fireplace. Earlier helicopter footage had also confirmed that smoke had been rising from the chimney of his house, and at that point, we began to see a clear gap between what Bridger was saying and what the scene was showing. Despite the thorough search, investigators found no sign of April inside the house or in the surrounding area. On the evening of October 2, Detective Superintendent Andy John met directly with the family to give them the latest information. And that was the moment all hope began to collapse. The family understood that the chances of April coming home safely were becoming very slim. Meanwhile, in the interview room, Bridger showed an unpredictable emotional state, at times appearing emotional and at other times evasive, but investigators were not convinced. And I started asking myself, were these emotions real? Or were they just a reaction created after being confronted? When confronted with the evidence, Bridger admitted that April had not survived, a statement that brought the entire investigative team to a standstill, after hours of working through the night while still hoping there might be a chance. At the same time, April's sister began to realize something troubling. At first, the name Mark Bridger meant nothing to her. But when she saw that face on the news, she realized she had seen this man many times before, often near the area where her family lived. He was not a complete stranger. And that led to another question. If he was not a complete stranger, then why did April get into the vehicle? By the third day of the investigation, investigators needed to prove that Bridger had caused the little girl's death by establishing connections and collecting forensic evidence. When investigators seized Mark Bridger's vehicle, they carried out a full examination of it to verify his statement about a traffic collision, but there were no signs indicating the car had ever hit anyone. There was no mechanical damage consistent with a collision, and the forensic team also found no biological trace of April inside the vehicle, which meant Bridger's accident story no longer had any basis. If there was no collision, then the question became, if there was no collision, what was that story created to hide? And what really happened after the little girl disappeared? The focus of the investigation immediately shifted back to Bridger's house, where investigators began to believe the main scene may have been. Here, the forensic team discovered traces of blood linked to April inside the house, showing that she had been attacked at that location, not outside as Bridger had previously claimed. The living room fireplace area was examined in detail, and from the ashes in the fireplace, forensic experts recovered several skull fragments along with bone fragments in the drainage area. findings that showed the scene had been processed inside the house. Based on the scene analysis, investigators did not believe the entire body had been completely destroyed by fire, but believed the bone fragments had fallen into the fireplace and drainage system during an attempt to erase evidence. At this point, the question was no longer whether a collision had happened. It was, why did Bridger create an accident scenario when the physical evidence simply did not exist? And what did he do during the time after he took April away from the neighborhood? As the search expanded, including his personal devices, investigators found that Bridger showed signs of seriously deviant behavior, with folders containing a lot of child abuse material and sexually abusive descriptions. From this point on, the investigation no longer relied on the suspect's statement, but entirely on forensic evidence to reconstruct the full sequence of events. As investigators expanded the search into digital data, investigators discovered that Mark Bridger's search history revealed a serious bias towards children, with folders containing a large amount of child abuse material and content that is sexually abusive towards children. This data did not only show a pattern of behavior, it also reflected a long-term obsession that went far beyond a random act. Among the files, investigators also identified images of victims from previous cases, including Holly Wells, Jessica Chapman, and Caroline Dickinson, showing that the suspect had followed and stored information about similar cases. Even more troubling, there were images believed to have been collected from the social media accounts of local children, including April and her sister. After this information became clear, Jasmine, April's sister, remembered that Mark Bridger had sent her a friend request on social media several months earlier. April's father, Paul, also confirmed that he had known Bridger since the 1990s, when they had some kind of personal connection, but he did not understand why this man had tried to approach his daughter. Coral, April's mother, had warned Jasmine not to accept that request, and Jasmine deleted it. If that request had been accepted, what could have happened? As the case shifted from a missing person search to a murder investigation, the community began to respond in a different way. About 150 people gathered at the local church for a vigil, no longer only to search, but to remember. The entire town began hanging pink ribbons, April's favorite color, as a way to show unity and remembrance. At the same time, police received more than 2,500 calls from the public after the appeal for information, showing the level of attention and pressure now focused on the investigation. Prime Minister David Cameron described the case as every family's nightmare and urged anyone with relevant information to come forward immediately. Meanwhile, Mark Bridger's custody time was gradually running out, and investigators only had until 5 p.m. to decide whether to charge him or release him, forcing them to request another 2-4 hour extension to continue completing the case investigative. Outside, the community continued to act, with about 450 people joining searches in nearby areas, even though the investigation had already moved into a different phase. By Saturday, October 6, 5 days after April disappeared, prosecutors officially charged Mark Bridger with kidnapping, murder, and perverting the course of justice in connection with efforts to hide any trace of the little girl's body. A representative from the Crown Prosecution Service said that, after reviewing all the material and evidence gathered, he believed they had enough evidence to charge Mark Bridger with the murder of April Jones, and that bringing the case to trial was necessary in the public interest. I have also concluded that there is sufficient evidence to charge the defendant with perverting the course of justice and child abduction. The announcement of the charges created mixed reactions in the community. There was relief because the suspect had been brought into the open, but at the same time, one reality could not be changed. A child had lost her life in a way no family could ever accept. And from here, the question began to shift. Who was Mark Bridger really? Mark was born on the 6th of November 1965 in Sutton, Surrey, the second of 3 children, with a father who had once been a police officer in London. After finishing high school, Bridger attended Croydon College, but did not complete his engineering program. In terms of appearance, he was described as a large man standing over 6 feet tall, the kind of figure who could easily stand out in any setting. People who had worked with him described him as sociable, hard-working, and able to make a good impression. The kind of personality that allowed him to blend easily into his surroundings. However, there were also comments that revealed another side, a clear obsession with the military, along with claims Bridger himself made, saying he had once been a bomb disposal expert and had changed his identity to avoid revenge from the Irish Republican Army. But those claims were never confirmed, and that raises another question. Was this the truth, or an image Bridger had created for himself? Mark Bridger also told police that he was a former member of the SAS Special Forces, and in interviews, he often emphasized his military achievements as part of his personal image. But when investigators checked those claims, none of them had any factual basis. Bridger had never joined the military. He had never served in any armed force. That raises a clear question. Why would someone build an entirely non-existent military record and keep repeating it as part of his identity? Instead of the distinguished past he described, the actual record showed a completely different path. From his teenage years, Bridger had already come into contact with the legal system, with offenses such as property damage, disorderly conduct, and driving without insurance, violations that showed early signs of instability. In 1984, he worked as a firefighter in London, but left the position after only 6 months for what was described as personal issues, with no further specific details confirmed. Around that same period, Bridger ended his relationship with his partner not long after their son was born, an event believed to have created a deep rupture within the family. The family no longer stayed connected the way they had before. The relationship was disrupted, and over time, those gaps were not resolved. They seemed to be covered over by another image, instead, an image Bridger had created for himself. In the years that followed, Mark Bridger continued building an image that did not match reality, even telling many people that his parents had died, although that was not true. Around the same time, he shifted his life toward Wales, an area he already knew because relatives had once lived there. For years, Bridger moved through different places and worked a range of short-term jobs, including bar work, cooking, serving, recovery mechanics, and forestry work. After multiple changes, he settled in Aberystwyth, where he continued working different jobs, including kitchen assistant, welder, lifeguard, and slaughterhouse worker. This record showed a clear pattern of behavior: instability, constant changes in environment, and an inability to maintain a long-term life structure. In his personal life, Bridger had 6 children with several different women, and just days before April disappeared, he had ended a romantic relationship, an event that, according to him, had strongly affected his mental state. Bridger said that after each breakup, he turned to alcohol and used antidepressants for a long time, but did not maintain treatment consistently. Do these factors simply reflect an unstable life? Or do they point to a deeper behavioral pattern, one where the need for control and attention from others played a central role? Because through his relationships and the way he reacted after they ended, it seems that attention from others, especially from women, was not just part of Bridger's life. It seemed to be something he depended on. A few hours before April disappeared, investigators determined that Mark Bridger had contacted 3 women through Facebook, suggesting casual meetups, behavior that showed he was actively seeking interaction on the very day the incident happened. Along with that, device timestamp data showed that at 12:11 p.m., Bridger accessed an image in his personal collection with folders containing a lot of child abuse material and sexually abusive descriptions. This detail did not stand alone. When police seized the vehicle, they found a roll of tape on the dashboard of the Land Rover, creating a direct link between the digital data and the physical evidence. So, was this just a coincidence, or was it a sign of preparation? Based on the evidence collected, investigators began forming a clearer picture of what they believed had happened. When Bridger approached April, he did not know that a young witness had seen the whole thing, a factor that later became crucial in determining the direction of the investigation. At around 8:30 p.m., Bridger's Land Rover was recorded at his home, about 3 miles from April's neighborhood. But the timeline between those 2 points still had a gap. Did Bridger drive straight home after getting April into the vehicle, or did he go somewhere else first? And more importantly, what happened during the period when there were no witnesses? At this point, investigators could not determine the full sequence of events with certainty. Based on forensic evidence collected later, investigators concluded that the attack, abuse, and killing of April most likely happened inside an enclosed space at Bridger's home, before he took steps to process the scene and hide the evidence. That raised another possibility. Bridger may have taken April directly back to his home, killed April there, then left again to move and dispose of the remaining evidence in different locations before returning in an attempt to create a confusing timeline. The vehicle being seen at his home at 8:30 p.m. did not mean that was the only time Bridger returned home that day, and that time gap is what makes us stop and look closer. Because if you look at this timeline logically, it does not line up. The next morning, just before 9 a.m., a witness saw Bridger near the riverbank carrying a black trash bag with a shape that suggested there was something heavy inside. Soon after, he took the Land Rover to a garage for repairs before returning to join the search for April, as if he were part of the community trying to help. But if you place these actions side by side, moving around during the night, appearing near the river area the next morning, taking the vehicle in for repairs, and then returning to the scene as a searcher, this was a controlled sequence of behavior. When DNA results confirmed that April's blood was found at Mount Pleasant, especially on the underside of the living room carpet and in the area in front of the fireplace, the picture began to become clearer. Based on the crime scene, investigators concluded that April committed a serious crime leading to his death at this location before manipulating the scene to conceal evidence, including moving and hiding evidence related to April to various locations. 135. The investigative team also noted that he had previously worked in a meat processing facility within a slaughterhouse. Investigators believed he may have used skills connected to that job during the process of dismembering April after killing her. Meanwhile, Bridger was scheduled to appear in court in Aberystwyth the following Monday, marking the official shift into the court process. But outside the courtroom, one reality still had not changed. April still had not been fully found, and the search continued. Police confirmed that more than 10 specialist teams had been carrying out systematic searches since early Saturday morning, checking each area and each location, hoping to recover what remained and fully answer the final question. On the morning of the 8th of October 2012, Mark Bridger appeared in court for the first time in the case involving the killing of April Jones. The atmosphere outside was chaotic. An angry crowd had gathered outside the court, shouting and throwing objects at the vehicle carrying Bridger as he was brought in. After the initial court appearance, Bridger was transferred to HMP Manchester, formerly known as Strangeways, to await the next steps in the legal proceedings.
There have been many expressions of hope over the last 7 days. This time, they lit lanterns. It marked the point exactly a week ago when April was last seen playing on this estate. Since then, many emotions have been released.
Six months later, on what should have been April's 6th birthday, her family stood in that very place and released pink balloons into the sky, the color she loved. And when you look at that moment, you can see a void that can never be filled. By the 14th of January, 2013, Mark Bridger formally appeared in court to enter his plea. At Mold Crown Court, Bridger officially pleaded not guilty to murder and kidnapping and denied deliberately concealing, destroying, or disposing of April's body. But what stood out was this. Even within the defense argument, there was still the possibility of acknowledging that he was directly connected to April's death. And from that point on, the trial was no longer about whether or not. It was about what really happened. For the first time since April was abducted, Coral and Paul had to face Mark Bridger directly in the courtroom. From that day on, they were in court every day, listening to every statement and every detail, determined to see the process through to the end, even if that meant facing the hardest truths. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the search continued, even as hope grew thinner. By March 2013, the BBC reported that the search operation for April's remains could end within the next few weeks, even though the full recovery had not been completed. Even so, police and the Crown Prosecution Service continued working closely together, focusing on finalizing the prosecution case based on the evidence already gathered. The preparation time was only 2 months from the time charges were filed, a very limited period for a case of this scale and complexity. When the trial officially began on April 29, Bridger returned to the story he had maintained from the beginning. He denied the accusations against him and tried to present himself as someone who had attempted to help April after an accident he claimed had happened. And then a statement emerged. April's young friend, the only direct witness, said she had seen April get into the vehicle and sit in the front seat before moving to the back, and then the vehicle drove away. There was no sign of panic. No accident, just a vehicle leaving the scene. And at that point, the story Bridger had been trying to maintain began to fall apart. While being questioned by defense attorney Brendan Kelly QC, he asked the girl whether she had clearly seen the Land Rover. "Yes, I did." He then asked whether she was sure she had seen April talking to that man. The girl answered, "Yes, I'm sure." Meanwhile, other details began to come together. A garage employee confirmed that at around 9 a.m. the next morning, Bridger brought the Land Rover in for repairs and said the vehicle had been in an accident. But what stood out to the employee was not only the reason for the repair, it was the way Bridger showed emotion. While the entire community was worried about April's disappearance, he seemed unusually upset, almost breaking down in tears when he mentioned the little girl. And at the same time, he kept asking about the repair cost and when he could get the vehicle back. Anxious, restless, focused on the vehicle. On their own, these details might not say much, but when placed at the right point in the timeline, they start to show a different picture. At the same time, another witness, someone who had joined the search for April, recalled seeing Bridger at a roadside parking area near the river less than half a mile from his home. He was carrying something that looked like a black trash bag. And if you look at this whole sequence of behavior, showing up with a black trash bag near the river area, taking the vehicle in for repairs right after that, and showing inconsistent emotions, everything starts connecting in a way that is impossible to ignore. And honestly, when I look at all of this together, it gives me a deeply uneasy feeling. After all the evidence had been presented in court, the jury withdrew to consider its verdict. And on May 30, they reached a conclusion. Mark Bridger was found guilty, unanimously on all 3 charges. The sentence was handed down, life in prison with a whole life order. In that moment, Bridger showed no reaction. He just looked down at the floor and stayed silent. No justification, no denial. On the other side of the courtroom, Paul and Coral watched the entire scene unfold as Mark Bridger was convicted of kidnapping and murder. After the trial,
Today, her parents, Paul and Coral, watched in court as Mark Bridger was found guilty of abduction and murder.
We are relieved that Mark Bridger has today been found guilty of the murder of our beautiful daughter, April. April will be forever in our hearts, and we are so moved by the overwhelming support we have had from so many people from all over the world.
And when you look at that moment, one thing becomes clear. Justice was served. But for the Jones family, it was not the end. It was only the way this story was closed on paper. The loss stayed with them. Even then, Mark Bridger still refused to reveal exactly what happened that night or where April's remaining remains could be found. And to this day, no additional parts of her have been identified. That left a void not only in the case file, but inside the family itself. And when you look at the way he held back that information, it starts to look like one final form of control, something he refused to let go of. When the trial ended, the image of Mark Bridger became clearer than ever. During sentencing, Judge Griffith Williams did not simply read the sentence, he clearly identified the nature of the defendant through his conduct. The court found that Mark Bridger was an individual with a repeated pattern of deception, often creating false stories to avoid responsibility and control how others perceived him. In addition, the court also concluded that he had maintained long-term deviant sexual fantasies involving children, reinforced through storing and accessing material, and linking it to his real-world conduct in the case. This was not speculation. This was a conclusion based on evidence. From a criminological perspective, Bridger's behavior was identified as calculable and intentional, including approaching the victim, carrying out harmful acts in an enclosed space, and then taking steps to process the scene, hide traces, and destroy evidence. In December 2013, justice officials confirmed that Mark Bridger had filed an application for permission to appeal his sentence. But just 1 month later, they announced that he had withdrawn the application only 11 days before the scheduled hearing, a decision that closed off his final legal path. Years later, in November 2018, major search engine companies announced measures to restrict access to online child abuse material. With hundreds of thousands of search terms no longer returning results, a change that showed the seriousness of behaviors similar to those seen in this case. But for April's family, those changes did not change what happened at Mount Pleasant. The house, the place where investigators determined the harmful acts had taken place, was later demolished. The family was there at the scene when the building was torn down, and to them, it was not just a building, it was the place tied to the memory of their daughter's life being taken away.